Let's start with chapter 2. The first code asks the user to input 5 integers and then find the smallest and the largest integers. The smallest integer is set to the first integer entered and then compared with the remaining 4 integers using if statements to check which one is smaller, and then same to determine which one is the largest. Finally, the smallest and largest integers are displayed here, and in this code it prompts the user to enter an integer and then checks whether the integer is even or odd using the modulus operator. And in this code we enter 2 integers. It prompts the user from 2 integers and then checks if the first integer is a multiple of the second integer using the modulus operator here. If the first integer is a multiple of the second integer, it prints a message saying that it's multiple. If it is not, it says it's not. And in this code you see prompts to enter 2 different numbers, and it reads those numbers from the console and then performs several arithmetic operations. It computes the sum, the product, the difference, and the quotient. Finally, it prints the results here for each operation of the console, including the sum, product, difference, and quotient. And in this code, the code prompts the user to enter a 5-digit integer, reads the input, and extracts the individual digit from integer using integer and division and modular operations. The extracted digits are then printed to the console, separated by 3 spaces each, like you see it. That's all for the first example, first chapter 2. We are continuing with chapter 3. Explain the difference between a function prototype and a function definition. A function prototype declares the interface of a function, while a function definition provides its implementation. It's the difference between the both of them. Second question, what is the default constructor? How are objects that has members initialized if a class has only an implicitly defined default constructor? A default constructor is a constructor that can be called without any arguments. It is used to initialize the data members of an object when the object is created. If a class has only an implicitly defined default constructor, the data members of an object are initialized using their default constructor. The default constructor for a data member depends on its type. The third question, explain the purpose of a data member. A data member is a variable declared within a class that stores data associated with the class objects. The purpose of a data member is to hold information about the state of an object of the class, and here's an example of it. The fourth question, what is a header file? What is the source code file? Discuss the purpose of each. A header file contains declarations for classes, functions, and variables used in other source code files, while the source code file contains the actual implementation of those classes and functions. The purpose of a header file is to provide a common interface for the source code using it, while the purpose of a source code file is to provide the implementation of the declarations in the header file. The fifth question, explain how a program could use class string without inserting using declaration. A program can use the string class without inserting using declaration by qualifying each use of the class with its namespace. This approach avoids naming conflicts that may occur when multiple namespaces are used in the program. Continuing it with chapter 4, the first question, what does the following program print? The program first outputs the squares of the numbers 1 to 10 and then prints the total sum of the c squares, which is 385. As you can see, the square of the x is here, and it will assigns it to the y. The variable total here, you can see, accumulates the squares, and in the end it gives you this output, the total of it, the 385. Second question, write a C++ program that uses a while statement and the tab escape sequence T to print the following table of values. Here's the table you can see. I have used the while while case here. I have picked the number 1 to 5, and it will print the number, the 10 times the number, 100 times, and 1000 times the number. Next question, what does the following program print? Here is the program. This program uses a while loop to output 10 lines. As you can see, the while loop here of text alternating between lines of asterisks and lines of plus signs. Here is the asterisk, here is the plus signs. What does the following program print? Here you can see the program. This program uses nested while loops to output a pattern of these symbols in rows alternating between each row. The pattern consists 10 columns and 10 rows. As you can see, 10 rows here and 10 columns here. The last question, write a program that reads 3 non-zero double values and determines and prints whether they could represent the sides of a triangle. Here is the code as you can see it. This program checks whether the 3 double values entered by the user could represent the sides of a triangle or not. It outputs an error message, as you can see here. The program checks whether the sum of any 2 sides is greater than the third side and outputs either a success or failure message, as you can see. And if it will be successful, it will going to output this message. That's all for chapter 4. Continuing with chapter 5, here is this question, and I have answered it with a code. This program prompts the user to enter the number values of to be entered, and that reads the number of integers and calculates the sum of it, as you can see it here. And then it uses a for loop to read in each value and add it to a running total. Finally, it outputs the sum of the entered values. Here you can see it. The second question, I have written this code and it continues here. This program prompts the user to enter a series of integers, like you can see it here, to 9 and enter 99999 to stop. The program keeps track of how many integers were entered and calculates their sum here. If at least one integer was entered, the program calculates their average and displays. And if there are no integers were entered, it will print these. Next question. I have written this code and it continues here. This program prompts the user to input the number of values and then asks for that many values from the user, as you can see it here. It finds the smallest value among these inputs and outputs it as the result. It initializes the smallest variable with the first input and then updates if a smaller value is entered. The program assumes that num values is greater than equal to 1, as you can see it here, the smallest value or not. I have used the if case and the for case for the values. If the number is smaller than the smallest code, it will be the smallest one. The next question, I have done this code. This program calculates the product of all odd integers from 1 to 15, sorry. It initializes the variable product to 1 and then uses a for loop, multiplying each one, as you can see it here, and then it prints the total. The last question, I have done this code, and this program calculates and displays the value of an investment after each year of 10 years with an initial principal of $100,000 and annual interest of 5%, and compounded annually. It uses a for loop, as you can see, to iterate over the 10 year, and the pow function from the C math library, as you can see the library here, to calculate the amount of each year. This the amount is then converted to dollars and then printed to here. Chapter 6, I have written this code to this question. This code defines a function called the hypotenuse, as you can see the function here, that calculates the length of a hypotenuse of a right triangle given the lengths of its two other sides using the Pythagorean theorem. The main function prompts the user to input the lengths of three right triangles, as you can see here, and uses the hypotenuse function to calculate and output the length of each triangle's hypotenuse. The second question, what's wrong with the following program? It's the program here. There is no condition to stop the recursion, so it will keep calling itself until it runs out of memory. As you can see, there is no stop recursion. And if the input contains non-printable characters, or if the input stream encounters an error, the program may not behave as expected. Let's skip to the other question. What does the following program do? Here is the program. It takes two integers from the user and multiplies them, then shows the answer as a result. As you can see, two integers. The result is here, mystery x and y. This question, and I have written this program. This program reads pairs of integers from the user and checks if the second integer is a multiple of the first integer. If it is, the program prints a message saying so, as you can see. If it is not, it prints this. The program repeats this process until the user terminates the program by entering a non-integer input. The next question is this, and I have written this answer. This program asks the user to input the number of integers to check, and then prompts the user to enter each integer. As you can see it here, enter number of integer, enter an integer in the for loop. It then checks if each integer is even or odd using a function called isEven. As you can see the function in the if segment, which returns true if the input number is even and false if it is odd. As you can see, if and else conditions here. The program then outputs whether each input number is even or odd. Hello, today I'm going to represent my project. It's about a car renting system in C++ language. Let's start with the code here. This is the classic code for the C++ and the library, classic library, and this is the starting line of it. But I additionally added the string library. I called it additional string library because of the name I'm going to get from the client. As you can see, here I defined a string for the name of the user, and I had defined an integer for the ID of the client, and these I'm going to use in the below. and I have defined the double because of the price will be an decimal number or an integer number, we don't know yet. First of all, I have taken the user's name from here in this line. Secondly, I have taken the client's ID number, and then I have taken the days the client is going to use the car here, and here her or his name I'm going to speak of, and in this code I have asked the client about which car model he or she going to use. We have 3 different models: Toyota, Fiat and Renault. Each of them has different prices per day, and I have used a switch case model to define it. And if the client enters a different number rather than 1, 2 or 3, it will be an error occurs, and it will say that invalid input, please enter a number from 1 to 3. It's going to be error will be outputted. And in this line I have asked the client for an additional insurance. Insurance adds $10 per day to the car. For example, if you pick Toyota model car, it will be at $35 per day. And then I have used an if case here for the insurance will be added or not. And in the end, it totalizes with this line. The car price will be multiplied by the rent day. And finally, it says that, dear Mr. blah blah blah, your total rental costs for example 3 days is going to be like this dollar, and return 0 means the code has ended, like this. And let's see how the code works. Like this, I'm going to rent for 4 days, and I'm going to pick a Fiat model car, and no, I don't like an insurance. And like this, your total rental cost for 4 days is $160. Thank you for listening.